Hello and welcome to SportsWire, brought to you by the Garden City Telegram. I'm Brett Marshall, the sports editor.
And I'm Levi Burnfin, the sports reporter for the Telegram.
Well, Levi, high school football is yet to start, which is this coming Friday, but you started the junior college football season this past week. Garden City Community College was on the road to Highland, first-year coach Jeff Sims, and they came up with a big win. So you were there. So tell everybody, what you saw and your impressions of Week 1 for the Broncbusters.
It's about what you expect from any Week 1 for any team from any level, really. A lot of mistakes from both sides. Highland was sloppy in some areas, turned the ball over quite a bit. Garden City was sloppy in some areas, especially in special teams. But the overall result was a win, and like Jeff Sims said after the game, he'll take it. And I'm sure a lot of coaches across the country will take a win in their first game if they play sloppy. Offensively, I think a lot of people were surprised on how they looked. They went full air raid spread, 4 wide receivers, had 0 designed running back runs, since the running back is actually what they call a sniffer running back, is right behind the offensive line. And so that took some people off guard. And so this week, I'm looking for is seeing what type of tweaks they make on that offense to make it a little bit more efficient. Last week, J. Rue Campbell, 12 sacks. Highland got him 12 times. Now he threw the ball for 300 yards too. So it's kind of that hit and miss that you saw against Highland that I'm looking to see if they are able to hit a little bit more.
Well, one of the things that you saw in the game is Garden turned the ball over early, got behind early. Defensively, what did you see with the Broncbusters? Because that seems to be the strength going into the beginning of the season.
Absolutely, and Sims said all through the preseason to me multiple times, since he is an offensive coach, being his background as a wide receiver coach, he wanted the defense to have the more talented players, and they do. They've got 13 of their 20 allowed out-of-staters. They have 13 of them on the defensive side, and they looked really good. They got 5 takeaways from Highland, really put pressure on Highland's QB Chandler Shantz all game, forced him into several huge mistakes. They allowed very little running room as well. They were just all over the place. They had a couple of bad plays in the first half that allowed some touchdowns, but in the second half they really locked them down, never allowed Highland into the game, and then they sealed the game with a strip sack by Jeremy Falk, who was also a stud for most of the game as well. So their defense really impressed, and I think that's something they can rely on for most of the season. All right, Brett. While the Garden City Community College got underway with a win on Saturday, the high school did have a scrimmage against each other. What did you see in that scrimmage that stood out to you?
Well, it's hard to tell what a scrimmage actually produces, but the things that I think I saw was they did, it's a controlled scrimmage. But what I liked is they ran first-team offense against first-team defense. For the most part, they can platoon the players. So not very many players going both ways, which is, I think, a very big luxury, for Coach Hill and his staff this year. Right now, as it always seems to be, the defense is ahead of the offense. They were considerably more aggressive, did a good job of stopping the run. I thought the secondary was much more active than they were a year ago. Did not see very many really big plays by the first-team offense. Coach Hill said that Jared Coster, their top running back, had even talked about how difficult it was to run against the first-team defense. So a lot more experience in this year's team. A lot of underclassmen played a year ago when they went 4-5. They ended the season a year ago with a huge win over Dodge City at Dodge. They trailed 14-0 in the first quarter and ended up winning 32-14. Big momentum builder, I think, for the off season. It'll be interesting to see how that translates, into Week 1.
As you mentioned, Jared Coster was impressive in the scrimmage. He's one of the guys we talked with for the football tab that's coming out this week, is he not?
He is. We selected 5 players this year to focus in on before the season started from 5 different schools in the area. Jared's a 2-year starter. He had his best season ever last year as a junior with just a little over 1,000 yards rushing. If he has roughly about the same kind of season or a little bit better, he'll become the all-time leading rusher at Garden City High School after the end of the 2015 season. But Jared, along with 4 other players we brought into Garden City 2 weeks ago for a photo shoot for our football tab that comes out on the day before the first game of the season. And in the tab, there's a multiple things of information that we think are helpful to interested people in area football. Profiles of the top players, reviews of all the teams, schedules for this year, last year's scores, championship score history for the state of Kansas that dates all the way back to 1969. So really, I think it's a treasure trove of information that people can keep hold of during the entire season. So, we've been doing this annually for many, many years now, and I think it's a great thing for the schools and the people who follow high school football in Southwest Kansas to have a hold of. And it's a lot of work, but I think in the end, I really believe it provides a wealth of information, to the football fan around the area.
Well, Levi, Garden City Community College 1-0, Dodge City Community College 1-0. Historically, they've played late in the season. This year they're playing in week 2. Big rivalry, the 2 schools in western Kansas that play Jayhawk Conference football. What do you see coming up between those 2 teams? And a lot of things happened a year ago that weren't good for Garden City Community College. They lost for the first time in quite some time. So
Sure.
Kind of recap that and what you see in the upcoming game.
Yeah, before the season began, I wasn't sure what to make of Dodge City. 2 years ago, in Dodge City's head coach's first year, they went 7-4, complete turnaround of the program. Last year, they went 3-8. So coming into this year, I wasn't sure what to expect, but they looked to be very good. They demolished Ellsworth last Thursday, and their offense hit on all cylinders. I talked to Thomas earlier this week. He said there wasn't much they did poorly, truthfully. They threw the ball well, they ran the ball well, very balanced, 347 yards passing, 157 rushing. That's the type of offense that Thomas would really like to keep going for the rest of the season. They're defensively, they held Ellsworth to just 7 points for most of the game until they scored late in a game that was over with. So Dodge City is a really big test for Garden, and as you mentioned earlier, Garden City lost for the first time to Dodge City last year in 35 years.
Gosh, that's a little bit older than what you are.
Just a slight bit older than me. Yeah, they lost, first loss in 1986, 35 straight games in a row, and that's a big thing for Dodge City to beat Garden. That's something they can be proud of and make it a little bit more of a rivalry going forward.
And I suppose you can sense the rivalry between the 2 coaches when they talk about the game coming up.
Absolutely. Now, with Sims, first time with Garden City, he's not sure, or he's not part of the rivalry yet. I'm sure he's going to take it seriously because it is a rivalry to the other 2 schools. But Thomas definitely, and you can tell when he talks about Garden City, establishing a winning culture in Western Kansas between those 2 schools, a team that can win on a consistent basis, that's big to get Western Kansas recruits, which is what those 2 schools need in order to compete in this conference and nationally. While 2 Western Kansas colleges are on the field on Saturday, Garden City High School is going to be taking on a team from the East on Friday.
Well, that's right, Levi. Olathe East, the Hawks are coming to Western Kansas for the very first time. It's a 402-mile trip, and they are leaving bright and early Friday morning to make the trip all the way out to play that night.
That's a trip that Garden City High School knows all too well from last year.
Well, they do, and unlike what Olathe East is going to do this year, Garden City left on Thursday afternoon, traveled, had a light workout Thursday evening in Salina, stayed in Junction City, had a walkthrough in Topeka on Friday morning, and bussed into Olathe by mid-afternoon and got ready to play the game, and then made the long trip back overnight, Friday night into Saturday morning. Olathe East won the game 26-14, but that was a very young and inexperienced Garden High team last year, and it was a very experienced Olathe East team. The big differences again between last year and this year, they're playing here, but Garden City's now got a lot of experience. Olathe East has a brand new coach. Jesse Owen. It's the first time in 24 years that Olathe East has had a new coach. So they've got a new system. It'll be interesting to see how that scouting report works. And I think it's going to be an exciting opening game for the Buffaloes on Friday night.
Has Owens let on anything on what you can expect to see from East?
From what I understand, he coached at Eudora, and they run a triple option. So it will be interesting to see how you can prepare for a triple option with a couple weeks of practice.
How much aspirin has Brian Hill gone through trying to prepare for that?
I'm sure it's enough because it's a little bit like what Hutchinson used to run.
For your viewers watching at home, on Saturday, after the games on Friday night, we'll have full game recaps and photo galleries and video galleries online at gctelegram.com.
Well, Levi, the Garden City Olathe East game is not the only area game starting out the season on Friday night. The area, we've got some really strong teams once again. The Holcomb Longhorns, they return a huge amount of their team from last year's 10-2 team that made it all the way to the Class 4A Division II semifinals before losing to the eventual champion Andale. They're at home against Cimarron, another Class 3A playoff team from the area, and they have a lot of players coming back. And the top player, coming back for Holcomb is their senior quarterback, son of the head coach, Trey Teeter. He threw for over 2,000 yards last year as a junior, and this is what he had to say about the upcoming season.
I've been a lot stronger this summer. This is the best summer that I've probably had in the weight room, just for not being injured or not having to go through injuries. And I had a consistent summer of throwing the javelin, throwing the football, and I've had a really good summer just from after football season and after track last year. So I guess the first goal is to get back where we were. And, you have to win districts in order to do that, and you got to compete each and every week to get better for your playoff games. And so after we win districts, hopefully again this year, the goal is to hopefully play Andale. I guess we would all like another shot at Andale at our home place. So that would be really cool if we could play Andale again, back at our house. So.
Brett, what are some of the other top games in the area on Friday?
Well, Ulysses, which is Class 4A Division I, they've had heartbreak in the first round of the playoffs the last 3 years, losing to Bueller.
Couple tough losses.
Couple of tough losses. 2 years ago, they lost 14-7, and Bueller won the state championship. Last year, they lost 49-37, and Ian Rudzik ran for over 200 yards in that game, and he's back for his senior year. He's got over 5,000 yards rushing so far in 3 years.
It feels like Ian's got like 6 years in high school at this point because he's just been demolishing the defenses for 3 years.
He started out with an 1,100-yard freshman season, went to 1,900 yards his sophomore season, a little over 2,000 yards his junior year. At 6'2", 230 yards with sprinter speed, state shot put champion. He brings a lot to the table for the Tigers, and I know they're excited. And they're playing host to Liberal, Class 5A school, member of the WAC, along with Garden City and Dodge. That should be a barn burner of an opening for the Tigers.
You've also got Scott City and Ingles playing this week. Scott City going to Clearwater. Those are two big games as well.
Well, it is. Clearwater was a Class 4A Division II playoff team. They lost to Holcomb, actually, in the second round last year. So I know that they've got a number of players back, so it's a big challenge for Scott City to go on the road. But Scott City has two 1,000-yard senior running backs coming back, Wyatt Kropp and Cooper Griffith, another one of our top 5 players. And Glenn O'Neill, coach of the Beavers, coached them to a state championship in 2012. In 8 years, he's 87-13, which is just a phenomenal record. So that's a big test for Scott City. For the first time in 5 years, they won't have an O'Neill playing quarterback. So that, I think, is one of the big keys, is how their quarterback and some of their defensive positions are going to pan out. And then you turn to 8-man football, Division II. You got the Ingles Bulldogs. They went 10-1 last year. They lost to Sharon Springs in the second round. Sharon Springs lost in the semifinals to the eventual state champion Victoria. And they've got 6 of their 8 starters back from last year, including Josh Ursig, who is a speed demon. He won the state 100 meters at Class 1A, and he's back along with their leading rusher, Branson Sandoval, who's just a junior.
He gets looked over a little bit, but he was quite a speedster himself.
Sandoval is, and I think they're going to be fun to watch. They should be explosive on offense. Defensively, I think they're going to be a little bit better because they've just got a little bit more experience, and their line is a little bit bigger and a little bit more experienced too. So Should be a fun opening night of Friday night football for the state of Kansas and Southwest Kansas.
On Friday in the paper, you can also find the community college preview with their game against Dodge City, and on Monday you can find the game recap with full statistics.
In Saturday's Garden City Telegram, you'll be able to recap all the information from Friday night's games, and you can always go to www.gctelegram.com for online information as well. I'm Brett Marshall.
And I'm Levi Burnfin.
You've been watching The Sports Wire, brought to you by the Garden City Telegram. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. at www.gctelegram.com.